Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm David Leedy, and this is an extended edition. Extended Episode 3, Introduction to Java for the XPages Developers, Part 2. Okay, we're going to continue on with our guest speaker, and again, I'm very pleased to bring back Jeremy Hodge from the Zeta1.com website and company. Again, he's a great contributor to XPage's blog, and he has a lot of good articles on using Java and using Java within the XPages environment. And this video series is really kind of a video version of how to actually get started with it, how to get around in Domino Designer and how to hook into your XPages. So without any other delay, let's pass it on to Jeremy.
Welcome back to the Beginning Java for XPages Developers series. Today we're going to jump into creating our first application here with Java and kind of showing you how it all fits together and build some up for scratch. So let's get started and jump right into DDE. Okay, so here we are in DDE. I've customized the view a little bit more. I've taken the items that were normally on the right-hand side, the outline controls, data, and so forth, move them off screen so you have a little more room to see what's going on. I've still got properties, events, and problems at the bottom, and the application navigator and the package explorer here on the left. So what the application we're going to create is basically a singer's index or singer's anthology, which is just basically a repository for different elements, different pieces of music that's searchable, so that the singer can find pieces of music, different arrangements, and different collections, and so forth. I've created a form already that has some basic descriptive fields about the individual piece of music, and I've created a view as well that has those same fields as well. And let's go ahead and create a new X page. And we'll start off just by creating a simple standard X page, as you might have seen it, pre-Java. And we'll add our data source, pick the index entry, give it a name. And we're off and running. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and bring over from the data panel all of the different fields and just drop them in here just to give us a base to start working with. You can see there it's pulled in all the different fields and whatnot. And we'll go ahead and save that and then preview it in our browser. And here it is. We've got all the basic fields that we just created, just the simple standard X page. Okay, let's jump back to DDE now and actually start creating the Java-based version of this X page. What we're going to do is create a class that represents this form, or this X page, we should say, and all of the fields, and it'll handle all of the validation and so forth. So let's go ahead and close this and go over to our package explorer, and we're going to find our singer's index database. And now we have to add our build path folder. So we're going to open our web content here and create a new source folder like we talked about before. So we'll go to new folder, src, finish, and right click, build path, configure build path, add folder, find the folder, select it, say OK, gets added, we say OK. And then here we are. Now we've got a folder in which we can create Java source code that will get recompiled and used in our XPages application. So now we want to create a package, basically, that holds our Java source code. Package is nothing more than a namespace for your application or for your Java class. Namespaces are basically just ways to uniquely identify different pieces of code to prevent conflict and so forth. Typical standard is usually your reverse DNS. So for example, Zeta1.com, we would use com.zeta1. I tend to use after Zeta1 the application name, and then the class name after that. So if I'm going to create a new class here, or a new package, I would probably name this com.zeta1.singersanthology, and that would create a new package, and then in there we're going to create the new class. So if we right click that and say new class, and we're going to have this represent that index form that we just created, or that index XSP page. So let's call that index entry and hit finish. And now you see we created a blank Java file, Java class basically, for the index entry class. So what we're going to do now basically is represent all of those elements of the XPage. So all of these fields, we want to represent those as member elements or properties of the class. So let's go ahead and just create simple string values for now for all of these different fields. So we'll start with published in and publisher, and we just basically give it a type and a name. And actually we want to make that all capitalized. And publisher. The next one we have is compiled, edited by. And then through the movie magic, as I say here, we'll go ahead and finish out entering all of our different fields. Okay, so now we've got all the individual fields represented by a string property here within our class. I added the keyword private to the beginning of them to basically keep them within the class. Basically, a private definition restricts the scope of the variable to inside the class. So a external method, such as a method in your XPage or a property of your XPage, could not directly modify publisher in, for example, or IMC number. What we'll use to modify those values and get those values are what are called getters and setters. And basically all they do is control the value of those individual property strings. And that's basically to help control what's going on in the class so that you don't have external methods, external functions modifying your code and making changes to your code without you knowing. They have to go through your getter or your setter methods to get those values. So let's create a getter and setter real quick. So basically a getter is the function that returns the value that they're looking for. So we might do a public publisher, get publisher, and because it's a function, it's going to return a specific type. So we're going to say it's a string type. So that basically says that we need to expect a string value to come back from this function. So if we say return publisher, basically now we've got a public method that returns the value of the private publisher variable. Now we can do the same thing with the setter, or the function that you use to set the value. So again, we're going to say it's a public, so it's visible external to the class. We're not going to return a value when this method is run, so we just say void, and then we say set publisher. And you need to pass a value in that you want to set publisher to. So we're going to say it's string type, and we'll use publisher with a lowercase p, and we'll set up our function block. Now, case is fairly important. Everything is case sensitive. When you create your private properties and so forth, you usually want to use the uppercase first letter of important words throughout the item. And then when you use your getters and setters, you can use the lowercase version of it and not cause conflict, but you know what the value is going to be or what it means. So here we'll just go ahead and say publisher equals publisher, and that's all we got to do, and that sets the value. So that's a basic getter and setter method. So now what we can do is we can actually have DDE create getters and setters for us. If we right click on the value here and go to source, you can actually generate getters and setters and have them do it for you. And if you just go through and select all here, it'll go through, and anything that doesn't already have a getter and a setter, it'll create one for, and you can set where it's going to put it. How is it going to do it? Is it going to do it in pairs? Is it going to set all the getters first, then all the setters? It's basically just to control how the source code gets generated, so you're comfortable with it. You can change the modifiers and so forth. Let's go ahead and just say OK, and you can see here it's gone through and now created all of the getter and setter functions that we need for our class. Okay, so now we've basically created a Java class that represents the same thing as our document index entry that we created in our XPage. So let's go back over to index entry and go ahead and save that. And we're going to use that instead of the document one, or the document that we created in our XPage. So the first thing we need to do is go down to our webinf folder here and modify our faces config. Now here's your typical faces config, brand new, empty as it was using. So we're going to go ahead and just delete that and end the faces config. And we're going to create a managed bean definition. So to do this, we use several different identifiers. The first being a managed bean. And then we need to give it a name. So we use the managed bean name tag. And we'll give it a name. We'll call it index entry. And then we need to tell it what class to use. So we use the managed bean class tag. And we come in here, we give it the full qualified name of our class. And then finally we need to give it a scope. And the scope basically controls at what level the object will be created and destroyed and recreated and cached. So this is basically, we want this in existence for the extent that the XPage is viewed. So we want to use the view scope. This is very similar to the view scope object that you have inside of XPages. Here you could also use none, which means that it is created and discarded every single time it's used. You can use request, which means it's good for the lifetime of a request. So from the submission through the resend of the data back to the client. You can use view like we are here. You can use application as well, and session, of course. So that basically defines the managed bean and gives us access to the index entry class that we just created inside of an XPage. So we're going to go ahead and save that and close it and come back to our XPage here. And let's just go ahead and delete the data. So now we've got indexentry.publishedIn, indexentry.publisher. We use the same name in the document that we just deleted here, index entry, as we did in our faces config, index entry. So it maps. We don't have to rename anything. So we'll go ahead and just, again, delete this. And we've already got all of our previously created fields already all mapped out. Now how this works is, because these are all inputs that can both read data, display data, and then write data back. That's how it uses the getters and setters. So when you supply a value to this input text, it's going to call your set published in method to provide that value back to your class. And when it needs to read the value, it'll use the get published in function from your class to get the value. And this is where those case that we talked about comes into play. Here we use the lowercase first letter of the property type that we want to access or utilize, and then it will automatically translate that from this published in to the proper function for get published in, for example, or if it's going to set it, to set published in. So you need to have that case set properly on your class and here. So we'll just use published in, and we're all set. So this is basically what expression language is. So it knows, it can go through and read that and translate that automatically because of what we've defined in the faces config file and what we have defined in our class. That expression can be evaluated and understood, and it will go ahead and apply those rules like get published in and set published in for the values. Okay, so let's go ahead and preview the application now in our browser. We'll go ahead and pull it up here and press enter, and oh, we got an error 500. So we needed to just figure out what we did, what caused this error. So let's, this is where it's handy to have access to your Domino administrator here. Now we can come up when we get that server error. You can see here we usually get a whole bunch of Java code from the JVM. So we can try to figure out where our error occurred. And if we kind of scroll through the response here, we can get an understanding of what's going on. Here's a pretty big statement right here, management configuration error. So something we did in the configuration document is incorrect. So let's go take a look at what we created. We'll hop over here to the Package Explorer, open the faces config, kind of scan through here. Oh, manage view named. That's not going to work. That's got to be manage bean name. So we'll go ahead and save that and hop back over and give that a try and see what we get. Oh, we still get an error, so we still have some problem somewhere. So we're going to jump back over here. We got another error code 500. Scroll up, invalid context factory. Yep, and there's our caused by. Invalid management scope view. Oh, well, that's a silly error on my part. View is not actually a valid scope. We need to be, like it says here, it must be none, application, session, or request. So let's go ahead and set that to session, save that, hop on over to our browser, and there we go. So there's our document now. Instead of using a notes document as the backend, we're now using our class as the backend. Now, there's other problems you can have, problems you can cause yourself when you create a class like this. Another one that tends to happen to me a lot, that causes a lot of errors, is not using the proper name correlation between a field and the particular value name here. So for example, if we had volume number here, and you can see we've got volume number there, if for some reason I had mistyped that and we call it volume nuber, and we go down here and we created our getters and setters and use the nuber instead of the number, and we save that, and we come back here. When we pull that up, again, we're going to get an error 500. And when you go to look at your Domino console, it's not going to be very easy to determine. You just get basically an error code 500. So in that case, you're going to start looking at, comparing what you've created to what's on the X page, slimming down your X page, creating some test pages maybe to kind of test your Java class. So in this case, we know that we screwed up numbers, so let's go ahead and just undo what we did there. Save the class, jump back over to our browser, reload the page, and we're off and running. Alrighty, I think that's a pretty good stab at creating some Java behind the scenes for our second installment of the Beginning Java for XPages series here. As before, if you have questions, feel free to email me, jeremy.hodge@zeta1.com, or Twitter @jeremyhodge, or on either my blog, hodgeblogs.com, or on the XPages blog. Our next one will get a little bit more in depth, do a little bit more with actually scripting and working with the documents and the data, and start to build out more functionality and more logic within our class. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to the next time we talk.
And that's the demo. Great stuff, Jeremy. Thanks again, and we look forward to your next contribution. If anyone wants to contact me, here's my information, and I thank you for your time. Happy coding.